So, two bits of Brexit related news today. Uh, One of the things I certainly know I've touched on in the past is I've always said one of the things that is going to end up, I think, really driving the path towards returning to the EU is that a lot of people in the UK like to go on holiday in Europe. And there are two things that are going to end up, I think, driving this annoyance to people. First of all, of course, you had the pandemic, which stopped a lot of this realization that, oh, actually, we're now having to end up in these long lines to queue, and it's having a very bad start and putting a lot of minds of people trying to start their holidays, in a good way. Now, of course, there's the old, British humor thing. Well, we like a good queue. We do like a good queue as long as it's moving. However, if you've ever been in these lines recently, or you've been unfortunate enough not to be the only plane arriving at that time, particularly if it's a very, very busy airport, you know that sometimes some of these queues can be a bit static. And if you've sat and people watched, or in this case, people listened, you know that there are a lot of very, very unhappy British holidaymakers having to start their holidays off in this queue. It is becoming seen as an annoyance. And I tell you now, that annoyance will not last because eventually, and a new thing coming in recently, of course, we're now having to pay a visa entry fee to enter the EU. That also not going to go down well with British holidaymakers. And I always said it back in the day, back in 2016, I could not understand why the Remain campaign did not run a campaign which was, you know, one with an empty queue with the EU, just, people walking through it, and then another one with a line with someone with a guy with, like, I don't know, um, typical British holidaymaker caricature at the back of the queue. I still do not understand why they did not run something like that. It really confuses me even to this day. Why did they not that? But I'll tell you what, any rejoin campaign should absolutely run that. Absolutely run that. That if we rejoin, your holidays are going to become a massively mighty bit easier, especially if you're going to go on holiday into the EU. So, something, of course, to really consider when it comes to this. But the other thing I said, also addressed in a recent video, businesses. It was businesses that originally drove at the time, the Conservative Party to become a pro-European force to join what was at the time the ECC. And ultimately, once again, it is going to be UK businesses that will drive political parties back into joining the European Union. And the voices, bear in mind, for businesses about all these complications that Brexit is causing, because it is only really in the business world where you really see these conversations happening about Brexit, which I think, and I've said multiple times, is a shame. And I made a video, last week before, about how we need to give sort of more space for these MPs to have these discussions about Brexit in Parliament. Well, I can guarantee you now, certainly, there will be, wouldn't be surprising me if MPs were having letters, phone calls, conversations about some of these problems, especially when it comes to holidays, from their constituents. Would not shock me in the slightest. But hey, there you go. But anyway, I want to get onto this because this is something that is going to affect the meat industry, because there's a new Brexit fee, and a lot of these meat firms aren't even aware that this is going to sort of affect them. So expect the meat industry to be in a bit of a tizzy and making their voice very loudly known, possibly in the next couple of months as well. But before we do get onto this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the Patreon page, and Pony Club down below as well for getting my own things. But anyway, over we go to Farming UK. Talking about this, the meat sector now warns firms are in for a shock due to new Brexit fees. So, the first invoices for the new common user charge for the import of meat and plant products through Dover have now started to land. And the sector is now warning that many firms will now be in for a shock. The British Meat Producers Association has said that the previous Conservative government had misled businesses. Previous Conservative government misleading people. Imagine my shock. Anyway, it said the previous Conservative government had now misled businesses about what the post-Brexit changes could amount to. And according to the body, the maximum of £145 per truck claimed by ministers at the time could now end up costing £870, depending on the product line and consignments contained by the truck. Peter Hardwick, the BMP's trade policy advisor, said that the whole contempt of a common user charge is now just another added cost of Brexit with no added benefit. In fact, that is just a tax. It is charged on every consignment passing through Dover and the Eurotunnel, he said. It is now levied to pay for the previous government's now over-engineered project to inspect 15 to 30% of consignments when another department was already under instruction to come up with the border operating models based on checks of around 2% of consignments. So, once again, the government, or at least past Conservative government, trying to cover up the real cost of what Brexit was going to be. But he continues, checks, of course, at this lower level could have been easily managed at Dover and Eurotunnel without the need for the Sevington facility or even a common user charge. However, the BPMA also then warned of an additional charge to consider. It was the border control posts, also an imposed by the Port Health Authority fee, which means that at the government-operated BCMs such as Dover and the Eurotunnel will now face double charged on every import of products, animals, food, and feed, and entry of now medium and high risk goods. None of these fees are directed back to the Port of Dover. So, more fees going in again. Mr. Hardwick also said that the Port Health Authority charges is now intended for the actual documentary and physical checks, again, to reflect a much higher level of checking than is actually currently taking place. The first few invoices of this new common user charge is now pushing now for a fairer system of trying to charge the proportionate of the work now being carried out. It is said that the port health charge is for automated digital check documents and should be at least small as standard charge, not based on the tonnage of the consignment as it is currently. So, this is the UK government trying to pay essentially for all these checks they now have to carry out. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Businesses sooner or later are just going to go, this is insane. Why are you doing this? Like, what is going on here? Be more sensible. And bear in mind, now that you've got a government that we know has been very open to saying, hey, businesses, we are going to listen to you. We want to hear what you've got to say. What do you think those businesses are especially going to start saying, especially after this summer? You know, once those charges start racking up, what do you think in a couple of months' time? All like the business magazines, all the the weird sector industry magazines are going to be full of. It's going to be all these new charges these Brexit charges, and I think again we should specifically be calling them Brexit charges, making the point that again this is only due to because of Brexit. Something else that the Leave campaign, conveniently forgot to mention at the time, as they always did. But let me know what you think down in the comments, because I can't see, once again, how businesses keep silent about this. They have slowly but surely been growing in their you know, frustration at all these Brexit fees, these Brexit charges, all these changes that Brexit has put on them, causing them to, you know, increase their prices or um, causing them extra cost. But sooner or later, even they will have to say, hey, government, you have to do something about this. And once that pressure starts to be applied, things will start to move even more. And of course, this is where we can come in as well and start to apply our own pressure on other areas as well. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.